footages are you gonna use? Because you use a lot of materials, a lot of other footages for certain films. You know that wasn't shot by you.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question either, but
Sorry, is it really so difficult or?
no, it just doesn't make it. I mean, when Oliver directs a movie, he shoots that footage. If he uses some other source material in the footage, it would be used as a byproduct in
Oh yeah,
television
I
or
would use
somewhere.
other source material, but that would be documentary footage, like sometimes in JFK, of course.
And is it in the script, or do you know it before that how much and what kind of materials are you going to use?
To some degree, yes, yes. It's pretty exact. I mean, it's not totally exact, but definitely it calls for it. Yeah. Sometimes you call for too much and then you cut back.
Okay,
We did Nixon together, and that's a good case of documentary footage, correct? We had a lot of documentary footage, but we shot a lot. If you can save money and make it work with documentary, although you know it's a different style, but I think I've been able to blend it with the editing.
That's an interesting question, and I'm jumping way ahead because the ultimate rewrite is the editing. Is the editing of the movie. That's when that's when that story comes alive, really. And that's a very important phase of the movie, you know, as a director, clearly. It's very important. For you as a writer, sometimes it's very strange because you write a particular story, you think you have it all, and of course, at the end, when you look at the movie, it's completely different.
The worst time for I think most directors would tell you the worst time for most of us the time when we come closest to committing suicide is when we see our first cut in a theater. No matter how hard you've worked, no matter how much you cut already, it's something flat about it. Because your expectations after having worked so hard to write, direct, produce this thing, make it happen, it doesn't seem worth the effort. And I have to tell you, it's a big letdown. So your movie is shapeless, 3.5 hours, 3 hours, 45 minutes, and oh my God. And that's a rough weekend. If you can survive that and come back and have a good crew with you, good collaborators, that's to say you're good producers who talk to you, good editors who work with you. We all chip in. You know, it's like a crew on a shipwreck where you decide to get all the stuff on a raft, and you're saying, well, we'll go out in this direction. And frankly, we ended up pulling it. You pull it together. But it seems like so much effort to get to a big amorphous blob.
Is there anything that helps you see that first cut honestly? Where honestly, in other words, can you really be critical with yourself? Or what helps you do that?
I think the first cut, as I said, is the hardest to watch because you have so many hopes and expectations. Often you're dealing with your expectations, and the film is not as bad as it looks. It's really better than you think, but it's always about that deflation of your spirit, you know. But often it's there. You just don't see it right away because you have so much other stuff that's around it, so it loses its shape. It's like a thin person who's very beautiful inside a big fat person, you know.
Let's get back to the ideas or how you explore your ideas. Do you write treatment or synopsis or an outline?
Often I would start with notes, just scrawling notes. Treatments, I used to do a lot of treatments, but often by the time, it depends. If I hire a writer to start the process, I would talk to him, give him notes, but he would go. And then he comes back with a rough treatment, we talk some more, and then we put flesh on the characters. But definitely, I love to write longhand. I still do. I like the feeling of the hand and the legal pad, and I love the idea of, I still love writing. I mean, it's old-fashioned, I guess, to a lot of you. I still love the act of writing, of being alone. I love the aloneness, by the way, and I think that's something we overlook, is to be alone with yourself is very special. Not to feel that you always have to be working with somebody else to feel your own creativity alone and to deal with that restlessness is very important. And a lot of directors don't do that. A lot of directors just want to shoot, and I'm not one of those because I don't like shooting that much. It tires me. I like to save it up. It's like good sex, you know. You don't want to have too much of it.
And so, how do you cooperate with somebody else as a writer?
How do I what?
How do you cooperate with somebody else as a
That's
writer?
hard. Sometimes you have to find the right person. Some writers are very beautiful people inside and very, call them a little bit more passive, a little less. Everyone's in different colors, but I've worked with writers who have told me what they think they should do, and sometimes that hasn't worked so well. But sometimes there's some ideas there. I mean, you have to work with all types of people, and I've not had one writer through my career, as you know. I've done my writing, and I've worked scripts that I saw came to me that I liked, books, newspaper articles. I go for the story. Go for the story. You can fall in love with the script, a beautifully written script, for example. It's really a delight to read, but it's not going to make a commercial movie. It's a nice reading. But, you know, after a year of working on it, or 2 years, what the hell did you do this for, you know? Because it was a beautifully written script? I don't know. I'd rather that person write a book, because the book will be seen too. But the perfect script, Robert Bolt used to spend 2 years writing the script, and I always wondered about that, because so rarely does it get transferred to the screen, you know, without screw-ups. So I would counsel you to turn the script around alone or as fast as you can, but do it fast. Don't get sucked in to a year's work on a script that may or may not get made, because it will break your heart. In my day, I tried to do 2 a year and a couple of treatments, so I didn't want to get stuck on getting rejected, because rejection is part of the game.
And why
She's asking me all these questions. Anybody else?
Okay. I let ask you. So, is there any questions out there? There? Yeah, we need the microphone because of the translator. If it doesn't work, you have to push this button. Is there a green light or?
Going back to Wall Street, the ending leaves you hanging in a way regarding the fate of Gecko. You're not sure if he's going to be prosecuted or not. I guess it's intentional. The little guy gets screwed, and the big guy, we don't know what happens to him. That's one part of my question. The other one is, do you always see clearly the end of your story or of the script, or you take a risk, you develop the story, and then you see where you arrive?
Well, I think when you're starting a movie, you don't have to know. Sometimes it's interesting exploration, stylistically, to not know. But you have an idea, or you may have 2, 3 ideas. You write. By the middle, you start to figure out maybe where it's going to go. That can be very experimental and very interesting result. It's dangerous. But it can be
Going
done.
back to Gecko.
As to Gordon Gekko, he, at the end of the first movie, he was wired, Charlie Sheen was wired and got an admission from him of the insider trading that would send him to jail. So his fate at that time was what you saw at the beginning of Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, is that he went to jail after he appealed for many years. He stayed out of jail because he's got money, but in the process he lost his family, and his son. Then he went to jail finally. His son committed suicide, and he had a daughter left, and he probably was in jail for 6 years, something like that. I forgot exactly what we said. And he came out a broken man, but he was smart enough to get back on his feet. But he changed in jail. We didn't go. I think people wanted to see the old Gordon Gekko, and nothing learned, and the same meanness. But I think they were somewhat surprised that we brought out a man who had been more humanized by his experience in jail, and tried to be a good father and a good
Since
grandfather.
I have the mic, I'd like to
What?
Since I have the microphone, I'd like to ask you one more question about what's your strategy when you get stuck developing a story? I mean, do you have certain rules for yourself? You leave the material alone a little bit and then go back, or do you have friends whose opinion you respect and show the material for help? I do assume that you sometimes get stuck with
I
stories.
like to do sweeping movements. I like to get a lot done and then show. Or, you know, sometimes I won't show it to my producer until a first draft is really ready to see. I mean, I will take the first draft and think about it and mull it and show it to people. I don't want the producer to get the wrong idea. So I don't show a first draft until I really feel comfortable with it. You understand? Because first impressions are crucial. If a producer reads it and he just doesn't get it, it's sometimes hard to get back to a place where you reconnect.
It's not, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. I meant to ask if, regardless of producers or production, you start a story, you start a script, and you get stuck at one point. You feel that you're not up to the task that you set for yourself. Do you have a strategy what you do then, or?
Yeah, I think, well, you get a co-writer, because sometimes that helps. Sometimes you have to, we all reach that place where you throw up your hands. I was full of shit, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's just like, it's like the rough cut though. It's often there, it's there, you had a good instinct, but you don't see it. You've lost sight of it. And sometimes a collaborator, a trusted collaborator can really help you there, or take it over for a period of time and you step away. That is a benefit and a luxury for me, because I am a writer-director and I can step away with a co-writer. I can step away and work on, often I have more than one thing going, especially with documentaries. So I do get a fresh perspective when I come back. It recently happened, in fact. I bought a book that I wanted to do, and we outlined it together, and it was perfect. It was going to be great. And then the first draft came in, and it was horrible. And I just felt very disillusioned that I had picked the wrong book. I had approached it in the wrong way. And then all of a sudden we were talking for 3-4 days. On the fourth day, I felt like I had a fire under me. I don't know what happened, but I saw the whole thing. The same book, the same story with the same characters, but in a different way. So the technique, how you get the audience involved is so crucial. And it's a beautiful thing to see when you can solve it. On Savages, I hope you see it tonight. Tell me, we'll talk about it. If you're here tomorrow, we'll talk about the techniques, because that is all about technique.
Thank you. I'm sorry.